$2.89 versus what, $4.25?
That is the gap. And it's a painful one.
It's a huge one. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we aren't just looking at numbers on a sign. We're looking at a warning light that is flashing bright red for the entire state of California.
It sounds alarming, I know, but the data really backs it up. We're looking at a scenario where that $4 gas could, spike to over $8.
$8. That's the dystopian nightmare number we're going to unpack. We have a whole stack of documents here.
We do. Reports from the Tax Foundation, memos from the California Energy Commission, letters from state senators, and then some really deep industry analysis from Argus Media and the California Globe.
And our mission today is to answer one question, really. Why? Why is California gas so much more expensive than everywhere else in the country?
And maybe more importantly, why are some experts warning that the entire system is about to break?
Because it's not just inflation. It isn't just bad luck. It turns out this is a very specific and very localized crisis. It involves taxes, it involves geography, and it involves a government strategy that might actually want the prices to stay high.
That's the part that I think really surprises people. When you dig into these reports, you realize this isn't some accident. It is, in many ways, a self-inflicted wound.
So let's get into it. Let's look at this Golden State Premium. We hear that term all the time. But what does it actually mean on the ground?
It means you pay more for the exact same product simply because of where you live. And it all starts with the receipt at the pump.
Right, which most of us just swipe our card and try not to look at.
Exactly. But if you actually break down where the money is going, it's pretty eye-opening.
Okay, so let's talk about the tax man. The Tax Foundation just released their July 2025 numbers. How bad is it, really?
It is the highest in the entire nation. The base state excise tax in California is 70.9 cents per gallon.
71 cents, just for the privilege of pumping your own gas.
Right off the top. And just for context, compare that to a state like Alaska, where it's about 9 cents.
Wow.
Or Hawaii, which is an island in the middle of the ocean, and they only pay about 18 cents.
Okay, but that 71 cents, that's just the sticker price, right? That's the one they actually tell you about.
Exactly. That's the visible tax. But the real story, and the reason prices are so volatile, is what's hidden. These are regulatory costs that act like taxes, but they don't show up on your receipt as a tax.
You're talking about the environmental program.
I am. The two big ones are cap and trade and the low carbon fuel standard, which everyone just calls LCFS.
Okay, so let's break those down. They sound like, boring bureaucracy, but they cost us real money. What exactly is cap and trade?
Think of it like a pollution permit. The state puts a cap on how much carbon companies can emit. So if a fuel supplier wants to sell gas in California, they have to buy these permits at an auction.
And I'm guessing the cost of that permit gets passed on.
To the driver, every time. In 2023, that added about 26 cents per gallon.
So the company writes a check to the state, and then they just charge you an extra quarter for every single gallon you buy.
And then on top of that, you add the LCFS. This one's even more complicated, but the basic idea is it forces fuel producers to make their fuel cleaner.
How do they do that?
Well, if they can't, they have to buy credits from someone who did like an electric vehicle charging company, for example.
So it's a wealth transfer, essentially. Money goes from the person at the gas pump over to the green energy companies.
Exactly. And the cost of those credits is just skyrocketing. The estimates vary, but some recent amendments suggest this could add anywhere from 8 cents to nearly 50 cents per gallon in the future.
Let's just do the math on that for a second. You have the 71-cent tax. You get 26 cents for cap and trade. You have another big chunk for LCFS. You are paying over $1 a gallon in government fees before you even pay for the oil itself.
And here's the kicker. The Tax Foundation makes a really important point about all this. Historically, gas taxes were meant to be user fees.
Right. You pay the tax, the state fixes the road. Simple. Fair.
But that deal is completely broken now.
How so?
Well, if you drive a Tesla, you don't pay any gas tax. You don't pay for the road upkeep at the pump. So the entire burden of maintaining the highways falls on the people who are still driving gas cars.
Which, let's be honest, tends to be working-class families who can't just go out and buy a $50,000 EV.
That's right. The plumber, the nurse, the delivery driver, they're the ones subsidizing the roads for everyone. And because gas tax revenue is dropping, the state is starting to panic.
That's where you hear talk about a vehicle miles travel tax.
Yep, tracking your mileage. But for now, they just keep squeezing more out of the pump.
Now, you mentioned something at the top of the show that I think is going to shock a lot of our listeners. We all assume the government wants lower gas prices. You always hear politicians say, we feel your pain.
Right.
But we found a report that says the exact opposite.
This was the wildest thing in the research stack. We dug into a report from the Independent Emissions Market Advisory Committee. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But they are the state's own expert advisors.
And what do their own experts say about $4 gas?
They say it is inefficiently low.
Low. Inefficiently low. Are they living on the same planet as the rest of us?
They're looking at it like pure economists. They talk about something called the social marginal cost.
Mean.
They argue that every gallon of gas we burn causes about $1.97 worth of damage to the climate. So in their view, the price at the pump should be higher to reflect that damage.
So they actually want us to pay more. They want it to hurt.
It's called a price signal. The idea is if gas gets expensive enough, you'll stop driving your car or you'll switch to an electric one. It is intentional.
But hold on. The state collects billions of dollars from these carbon fees. And they give out climate credits on our electric bills.
Yeah.
I get one twice a year.
Right. If you have an electricity account, you get a rebate. But the report itself explicitly admits there is no direct rebate mechanism for gasoline.
So the driver pays the penalty, but the homeowner gets the reward.
That is exactly how the system is designed to work. It's a massive redistribution of wealth. And this is why the critics are so furious. We read some pretty fiery letters from the state Senate Republicans.
Senate Minority Leader Brian Jones did not hold back.
No, he called it a crusade against gasoline suppliers. And the California Globe backed that up. They quoted industry leaders who are calling this a full-blown affordability crisis.
Yeah, it's easy to talk about price signals when you're in a conference room. But if you're a family trying to get your kids to school, that signal just looks like an empty bank account.
And it's driving people out of the state. If you can't afford your commute, you can't afford to work here.
But it's not just the drivers who are leaving. And this, I think, is where the story gets really scary. It's the refineries. The actual factories that make the gasoline are packing up and leaving.
This is the headline news. We've got confirmed reports that 2 major refineries, Phillips 66 down in Los Angeles and Valero up in Benicia, are shutting down their operations.
And Valero shut down even earlier than they were expected to, right?
They did. They powered down at the end of January. And people need to understand the scale of what this means. We're not losing a corner gas station. We're losing roughly 20% of California's entire ability to make its own fuel.
20%. Just gone.
Look, wiped right off the map.
So why? I mean, if gas is so expensive, shouldn't these companies be raking it in? Why would they just leave?
It all comes down to the regulatory environment. The state has passed a law that bans the sale of all new gas-powered cars by 2035.
So the industry has an expiration date.
Exactly. A refinery takes billions of dollars to maintain and operate. Why would you possibly invest that kind of money if the government has legally mandated that your core business has to end in 10 years? It's just a bad investment.
Plus, they keep getting hit with fines. Valero was hit with an $85 million fine not too long ago.
So the companies, they look at the fines, they look at the 2035 ban, and they just say, we're out. They'll cite market dynamics, but that's just business code for you made it impossible to do business here.
Now, I can hear someone listening and asking, so what? Can't we just buy gas from Texas or Arizona?
Yeah.
But it's not that simple, is it?
No, it's not. And this is what's known as the island effect. California is, for all intents and purposes, an energy island. We don't have major pipelines connecting us to the Gulf Coast. The Rocky Mountains are in the way.
So we're physically isolated.
And we're also chemically isolated. California requires a special, cleaner burning blend of gasoline that basically nobody else in the world makes. You can't just truck in a tanker of gas from Nevada.
In fact, Nevada gets its gas from California, right?
They do. So when our own refineries close, we can't get help from our neighbors.
We have to look overseas.
We have to. Back in 1988, California imported less than 5% of its oil. By 2020, that number had jumped to over 70%. We are now totally reliant on tankers bringing oil across the ocean.
That sounds slow. And very expensive.
It is. And that's what leads us directly to that $8 prediction.
Which comes from a study at the USC Marshall School of Business.
Yep. They ran the numbers. They looked at the refinery closures, the lack of pipelines, the import delays. And they project that these supply constraints could cause prices to spike by as much as 75%.
hitting $8.43 a gallon by 2026.
So just imagine that for a second. Imagine filling up a normal 15-gallon tank and paying over $120.
It would completely crush the economy. Every truck that delivers food, every single contractor, every delivery driver, all of their costs would double overnight.
And that gets passed on to you at the grocery store, everywhere. It's inflation on steroids.
And it seems like politicians in Sacramento are finally starting to panic. They can see the cliff coming.
They are absolutely scrambling. Republicans are demanding an emergency special session. They're calling Governor Newsom complicit because he essentially watched these refineries close and did nothing to stop it.
But even the Democrats are getting worried. We saw Assemblymember Petrie Norris asking, if these companies are so greedy, why are they leaving?
It's a moment of real clarity, I think. You can blame corporate greed all you want, but greedy companies do not close down profitable factories. They leave when the risk becomes too high.
So is the state doing anything to fix it, or are they just watching it burn?
They are trying to backtrack a little bit. We found a report from Argus Media that says regulators have paused a new rule about a refining margin cap. They wanted to limit profits, but they realized it would just chase more companies away.
So reality is finally hitting them in the face.
It seems so. The Energy Commission is even talking about speeding up permits in Kern County to get more oil production online. They want a one-stop shop for permits now.
After years of trying to shut that exact industry down, now they want to fast-track it.
When you're staring down the barrel of $8 gas, ideology tends to go out the window. They're trying to stop the bleeding.
There's also that new bill, SB X12. It forces refineries to report any planned maintenance 120 days in advance. Is that going to help at all?
Well, critics say it's just more paperwork. Knowing a refinery is going to close doesn't magically create more gasoline. It's basically just monitoring the decline, not actually fixing the root cause.
And there's one last thing we have to mention. This isn't just about money. It's about national security. The California Globe raised a huge red flag about the military.
Yeah, this is the part that should keep people up at night. We have massive military bases all along the West Coast. Camp Pendleton, Naval Base San Diego, they all run on fuel.
And if you're importing 70% of that fuel from foreign countries,
it's a strategic nightmare. If there's ever a conflict in the Pacific and those shipping lanes get blocked, our own military doesn't have a secure fuel source on the West Coast. We have completely outsourced our energy security to the global market.
it seems like we gave up our independence for a policy goal that isn't even working.
That is the conclusion a lot of these experts are coming to. It's a perfect storm. The highest taxes, the most aggressive regulations, refineries leaving, and absolutely no backup plan.
And the result is the Golden State Premium. We pay more, we get less, and the whole system is incredibly fragile.
It's a self-inflicted crisis. You can't regulate an entire industry out of existence and then act surprised when the product starts to disappear.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We talked about how the state's advisors want high prices to be a signal for the green transition. They want to force people to change their behavior.
But here's the real question. If that signal hits $8 a gallon, does the transition itself survive?
That's the real danger here, isn't it?
If you push people too far, they don't just go out and buy an EV, they vote for a revolution. If working families literally can't afford to drive to their jobs, the political will for these climate policies is going to completely collapse.
At some point, the transition just becomes a breakdown.
And looking at the data for 2026, we might be a lot closer to that breakdown than anyone wants to admit.
Well, that is the reality of the pump. It's not just a price tag, it's a policy choice. And right now, we are all paying for it.
Knowledge is power. Stay fueled up.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.